it's Dr. McRobbie again. Today I thought I would take you through how to do references and citations. It's part of topic 3, but it's also a really important part of your project. Okay, so I will take you through this PowerPoint and I'm going to take my time with it because it's something that's quite tricky and a lot of people find it quite difficult. I've used a lot of the information from the SQA, well, I've used all of it from the SQA document that they provide for you called Instructions for Candidates. So I'm going to take you through that and then make this PowerPoint available for you to go back and look at as and when you need it. So the first thing that they tell you is what a citation is. So a citation is basically if you've got a big text of information. So say you've written your introduction and you've included a sentence that the information you have gained from somewhere else, and you need to now reference that person. You need to say, well, actually, I got this information from Carson. Okay, so a citation is within that big bit of text, and you're saying this sentence I got from reading this document, and then you then go on and do a whole reference list to give a bit more information about that. But a citation is within the text. And there are two main ways to do that. The first one is called the Harvard system. And that puts the citation within a bracket. Okay. And the bits of information you include are the author's name and the year in which that source was published. So for example, if this bit here, this stuff about dust and spray and aerosols, that information there you got from this document, you take the first author and you add the initial. If there are two authors, so say it was Carson and Smith, you would write Carson Smith, 1962. If there are more than two authors, you can't keep going, say Carson Smith, Jones, and whoever else. You then just say, well, I'm only going to put one and I'm going to write et al. So for example, Carson et al. 1962. So this one here is an example. So talking about classification systems of proteases, you didn't know that already. You went to this document, but there was 10 authors on it. So you've done Rawlings et al. 2006, and Rawlings is your lead or first author on that document. The other alternative you have is to move to the Vancouver system. And that is a numerical system where within your body of text, you're going to use numbers. Okay, so numerical system that use numbers, and you either put that number as a bracket or a superscript. So for example, you've written this bit about mitochondrial DNA and you've got that information from source 3. So you can either write as a superscript or put it in brackets. Okay, so those are your two main options. So you decide which one you prefer, and you'll form your whole document around that in terms of referencing. Once you've done your citations, you then want to have a reference list at the end. So you say citation 3, but that will then, you'll go to your reference list and you'll get the full information about that. If you've gone with the Harvard system, your reference list should be organised alphabetically. Okay, so based on all of the references and all the citations throughout your document, you're now going to go and list them alphabetically. So Carson before Daniels, for instance. If you have gone for the Vancouver system, you are going to list them in numerical order based on the order in which they appear in your text. So Stanley appears in your document before Carson. Okay, so they're listed numerically. Regardless of what system you choose to use, the references are done in the same way. So what information should we include so that somebody can go back and find that source of information? If that is a book, in the instructions for candidates, it tells you that these are all the pieces of information that you need to locate in your source. So you need the author, and that's always written with surname before initial. So for instance, McRobbie, A. The year it was published, the title of the book, the place it was published, and by who, and the page numbers that you used for that information. And here's an example. So Carson, his first initial R, in 1962, The title of the book was Silent Spring. It was published in Boston by this company, and the information that you used was on page 189. So that's the minimum amount of information you need. If you find an online book, so you've just been Googling, a book comes up, you do not use the website title or the URL. It has to be exactly the same rules as if that was a printed book. So exactly the same rules as what we just said. So you need your author, the year of publication, the title of the book, place of publication, publisher, and the page number. So an example might be something like this. So this is an online book. You cannot just put in the URL up here. You need to locate the author, the date or the year of publication. You need the name of the book. You need something about where that has been published, and then chapter 2. If you can't find the page numbers, chapter 2 in this case would be okay. At that point, I would then include the URL as well. Okay. If that was a journal, now this should be, you're at the stage now where you really want to be focused on this high-end level of source. And the reason for that is because it has been peer reviewed. So remember, throughout topic 3, we start to talk about that. How do we know that something is a reliable source of information? Well, journals have gone through that peer review process. So this would be the kind of information where I would be hoping you'd be getting a lot of your information from. In this case, you need to find the author, again, surname before initial, when it was published, the title of the article, the name of the journal in italics, the volume number, in brackets, the part number or the issue number, and then page numbers. Okay, so an example might be here. So this is your full list. Oops-a-daisy. Let me see what I've done here. Sorry. So, if this was your full list of authors, you've got your year of publication, effects of caffeine on blood pressure, and so on is your title of your article. Journal of Applied Physiology is the name of your journal. Volume 85, issue 1, and the page numbers. Okay. An example is here. So your full reference, Campbell et al., because there's more than one author, 2013. The title of the article, sometimes very long, you still need all of it. European Journal of Pharmacology. And if you couldn't work that out, you usually can click on there, and actually your abbreviations would be enough as well. Volume, issue, page number, and then I would usually put in where you got that from as well. So the URL. Online journals, exactly the same. So something like this one, the information for journals, sometimes you actually get printed books of articles. More often than not, what most people will find is that your article has been published online, and that's how we access it. However, there's lots of general websites like Springer Link that will publish lots of these journals. You cannot use the URL on its own. If you found that article online, you still need to recognise what type of source that is. Is it a journal or is it an online book? And you need to use that same format that we just talked about as if it was a normal published journal. Finally, a little bit of information about websites. Generally speaking, I would not recommend using too many websites, especially for your project. They're a lot more difficult to get all the right information from that you need for a proper reference. And quite often you can't be entirely sure of their reliability. If you do choose to use a website, you must find the following information: the author or the organisation. So for example, say the NHS, so that would be the corporate author, the date that the article was written, the title of the article, and the publisher, the URL, and the date you accessed it, since it can be updated and changed. Okay, so for example, this website here that a candidate has maybe used about liver disease, it was published by the American Liver Foundation, so presumably that is then the corporate author, the organisation. In 2016, this was the name of the article that they read, and this was the full URL. They accessed or visited that in April 2019. If you are citing websites, it's sometimes really difficult to find out who wrote that information. Like I say, you can use what's called the corporate author, the organisation that was responsible, and sometimes you can work that out from the URL. So if it's a government website, you might be able to figure out what the corporate author actually is. If you genuinely cannot find, then you can use anon. However, we would generally recommend you not using those because we cannot be assured of the reliability of that information. Okay, so an example might be this one here. Presumably, if you're looking at something like Good Old Daphne and the Effect of Caffeine again, this one luckily has the author here. So you would say Bunch TJ is the author. In 2016, the name of the article, Caffeine, Your Heart and Exercise. It was published on Everyday Health, available from this URL and accessed on the 1st of April. You might as well, something I often will recommend students have a look at is the actual crystal structure of their protein if they're doing a more biochemistry based project. And so they might visit the protein data bank and try and gain a little bit more of an insight as to the structural properties of that protein. So here you're wanting to look at the deposition author. So Joint Centre for Structural Genomics, it was published 2010. It's on the Protein Data Bank website for the crystal structure of a putative pectinase, and then you can get the full URL and when you access that information. Okay, so I hope you find that useful. I'll make this available for you through the website, but also generally you will just get that information through the instructions for candidates, which you can access with this URL here. Okay, thank you very much. And I will speak to you soon.